Welcome back to Movie Review Mom. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me while we talk about movies. Okay, I'm the one doing all the talking. Anyway, the movie that I'm reviewing today is called The Rhythm Section. It is rated R. It's an hour and 49 minutes, and the Movie Review Mom grade I'm giving it is a C+. And I'll tell you why, but first I'll give you a quick overview, point out some tips for parents, and then talk about some things I liked and didn't like. So first of all, in a nutshell, this dramatic thriller was written by Mark Burnell and based on the first novel in his Stephanie Patrick thriller book series. Unfortunately, the movie is scoring fairly low with audiences and critics, so it may not turn into the successful franchise that his books have. However, based on the fact that everyone in the audience that I watched the movie with was a middle-aged man, the beautiful Blake Lively will most likely get a sequel out of this gritty film. It was directed by female director Reed Morano and features a woman who sets off on a journey to get revenge and justice because her entire family was killed in an airplane bombing. Now, some are describing this movie as an anti-James Bond spy film because Blake Lively's character isn't a spy and she's not very good at the revenge business. It's really less about the action and more about the futility of revenge in the search for peace and meaning. I actually like the fact that she was not a super spy with cool gadgets and years of training. She seemed like an everyday, realistic girl trying to find justice in the world. And by the way, if you're excited about the upcoming James Bond newest feature, MGM just announced that it won't be released. It's being pushed back a little bit more until April 8th, 2020. Now, some quick tips for parents. The movie is very bloody and very violent with lots of various weapons and even hand-to-hand combat. There's guns, killing, murder, dead bodies, profanity, drugs, mention of prostitution. You don't really see any big action, but you do see a prostitute and some other women in a house of ill repute. You see Blake Lively in her underwear and some other sexy garments. There's talk of radical Islamic clerics who promote terrorism. And then there's talk of terrorism and bombs and that kind of stuff. And then you see a picture of a naked woman on a wall. Now, some themes that are worth talking about are justice, revenge, spies, survival and survival guilt, healing and closure, and what it takes to get those in your life after you've experienced some kind of trauma. And then also decisions and consequences. Now, some things that I really liked are, first of all, Blake Lively has proven herself to be a very effective action protagonist, especially grabbing everyone's attention in the movie The Shallows. I was like, wow, of course she's gorgeous to look at, but I was like, okay, let's see what else she can do. She seems to really give it her all, and she even injured herself fairly badly, which halted production during the filming for a little while. Now, I have some things I didn't like about her that I'll tell you about in just a minute, but I really do like her. There's some intense music by none other than Hans Zimmer, so that's awesome. However, I also have some criticism about the music that I'll talk about in a second. There's some really interesting camera shots, and however, there are also some really strange editing choices that I'll talk about in a minute. There are some really exciting action sequences that look like they were taken in one take. That's always super impressive. For example, there's this one car chase scene that looks like it's actually shot by somebody who's sitting next to Blake Lively during all the crazy action. So that was awesome. You get to see and go with Blake Lively to interesting locations in Tangier, Scotland, England, and Madrid, to name a few. And I thought the title of the movie and the book was actually very clever, and you'll hear several times during the course of the movie what it all means. Now, some things that I didn't like. I mentioned Blake Lively is gorgeous, yet in this movie, she's actually very plain and real, and I liked that. But it made me laugh because you can always tell when a beautiful actress wants to be taken seriously in her career by how plain she allows herself to look in a movie. I think Charlize Theron actually should win an award because she looked so bad in the movie Monster and then more recently in the movie Tully. And yet she pops back to her gorgeous thin self. She's amazing. But anyway, back when Blake Lively was in the movie The Age of Adeline, I thought she was so stunning, so beautiful, but I could not relate to her character, obviously because I'm not stunning and beautiful, but really because she was so rich and beautiful and we were supposed to feel sorry for her. I was like, yeah, no. But in this movie, I had a hard time relating to Blake Lively's character, Stephanie, because of her terrible choices. And she just allows herself to literally go down into the gutter rather than getting some therapy and getting some help initially after the accident. Now, I'm not saying that her reaction wasn't normal or healthy. It's completely normal. But at some point, here she was supposed to be this great Oxford college student or something, and yet she couldn't quite pull herself up out of it. And then so she just makes bad mistake after bad mistake, all these bad choices, like almost the entire movie. So it's hard to feel endeared toward her when her entire mission during the movie is revenge. And she is so haunted by the fact that innocent people have died. And yet, because of her poor decisions and lack of skills, she causes a lot of other innocent people to die too. And so you're just like, stop the insanity. Now, a couple of times I felt like her American accent sort of slipped through her attempt at a British one. But overall, I really did think she was great. And I think she's got a great future in action. And because she's just so gorgeous, she has many, many years, I think, in movies. So I enjoyed her performance. Now, another thing that bothered me was that some scenes just linger too long. Like there's this one bombing, and you just see her stumbling forever, like a minute or 2 minutes, just it lasts forever. And a lot of scenes are like that, where she's just fumbling around. You're like, okay, let's get on with it. The character development sort of unfolds in a strange way, and there are so many flashbacks that make the movie longer than it needs to be and even becomes a little bit annoying at times. And one thing that's odd too is that the way some of the movies are filmed, for example, you see her, she's thinking about what she should do, and then you actually see like a flash forward of what's actually going to happen. So it reduces the tension when it actually does unfold because you've already seen the scene already. You know what I mean? So that was kind of strange. Some of the action sequences are obviously cut. And again, I'm such a fan of Charlize Theron. When she kicked butt in Atomic Blonde, she did a lot of her own stunts. And so there were long action sequences without cuts. And not to say anything really negative about Blake Lively because she was working really hard, but there were some editing choices that halted the action a little bit for me. There are also some really odd music choices that don't quite match what you're seeing. And then all of a sudden, this upbeat, kind of quirky, funky music stops. And then you're just sort of left into this somber drama again, which is just kind of odd. There's really not any humor unless you count the entertaining fight scene between Blake Lively and Jude Law, which I do. It was actually really fun. Um, there's also this gray color palette that makes everything seem especially dreary and sometimes boring. It can be used very effectively, but in this case too, it just kind of seemed a little boring and kind of pulled the energy down. Now, that was appropriate when she was, a drug addict on the streets and all of that, but then it should have lightened up a little bit, in my opinion. But then, I'm not the director. Now, there are a few scenes that happen at night or in dark rooms, so it might be hard to see what's going on after the movie goes to DVD and streaming, especially if you're watching it on a small monitor. All right, the movie is just a very slow burn. And again, it's more about the people and the after effects than just this slick spy movie, which it's definitely not. Now, there are plenty of interesting lines, and I'm trying to keep this short so that you can get to the theater and watch this movie. Be sure and subscribe not only to my YouTube channel, but also head over to moviereviewmom.com, because that's where I write down a lot of the really interesting lines. So if you want to read those and see a few more things that I've said about this movie, then go head over there. I just announced a winner from our last contest, so I'm going to get ready to have another contest. So be sure and check that out. I'll leave you with one line that I thought was particularly interesting. So a character whose name is Proctor, played by Raza Jaffrey, he's talking to Stephanie, and she's acting like she's such a victim. She's in drugs and prostitution and all of that, and he says, "You're another victim. You're just not dead yet." And she is. And as she finally starts to realize that, she kind of starts to pull herself up to try to fight this feeling of being victimized and to try to get her life back. Anyway, some other movies that I would recommend if you like the female kick butt type of movies are, first of all, a movie called Enough with J-Lo, and another movie called Peppermint with Jennifer Gardner. And I like them because, again, they're not like super slick spies, but they're trying to get some justice and kind of protect themselves, really. And then just another fun movie about a man who's trying to get some sense of justice in the world is Death Wish, the most recent one with Bruce Willis. Anyway, I hope you have a great time at the theater, and I'll see you later. Bye for now.